Welcome to the Red and Bold Show. What is up? I am one of your hosts, Mark Adams. You can find me wherever you watch or listen or on Twitter at 49ers Camelot. And I'm joined by my co-host extraordinaire. What's up, Ant? You can find Anthony Robertson at 49ers Cutback wherever you watch or listen. How's it going, my friend?
It's going good. It's never easy when the 49ers lose two games because the fan in you gets really frustrated. The fact that they're losing, and I found myself in enough frustration watching the film and then breaking it down on Patreon. You find the reasons why, and I think sometimes they're not always apparent when you watch the game in the TV copy, but when you watch the All 22 film, you just can't hide from it. There's things that you see that you really like. There's things you see you don't like. And I think that's one of the tough approaches is how do you go from what I saw as a fan to what I understand as somebody that understands football, knows football. And it's like, where do the 49ers go from here? How do they get better? How can they fix these problems? And so it's been a range of emotions through the week. I think as the week has gone on, I've definitely seen that the 49ers have things they need to fix and they need to get those things done because you can't let this season slip away. It's not out of the picture for them to do good things this season. We all remember 3-5 starts and struggles for the 49ers in the past, and they've been able to overcome. Luckily, this isn't college where a couple of losses like this, and you're probably out of the picture of having a chance to win a national championship. But with the NFL, all you have to do is get into the dance. So 49ers can definitely do that, and they still got a lot of talented players and some pretty good coaches too.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and we're going to have some interesting discussion here today, including some of what you just kind of hit on. So before we get into this, I want to just give some quick updates from 49ers practice today. Brock Purdy practiced. Trent Williams did not because of illness. George Kittle practiced but was limited. Debo did not practice. He's probably still going to be out for a little bit. D. Winters did not practice. We're going to talk about D. Winters here in a minute. We'll probably talk about Brock Purdy at some point. One interesting thing is on Friday, I'm supposed to be on some Patriots show. That really has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. But the interesting thing that this guy reached out to me and said they want to talk 49ers and Patriots. And I said, that's great. But somewhere in there, I want to hear from you how your fan base is doing post Brady. Because we had it a little different. I mean, yeah, they won more Super Bowls and had a long dynasty, but they lost Brady and then it was done. We went from Montana to Young to Garcia, who really isn't in the same class as the other two. But, for us, it was different. And I just am curious what that has to be like to be a Patriots fan, to go from Tom Brady, some say the greatest of all time, certainly the greatest winner of all time, to nobody that's any good. I'm just curious to see what see how they're doing with that. I think that'll be interesting to talk about, but that has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. I just thought of that, and I don't know, have no idea why. Let's get into this. Want to start with this. What is wrong with the 49ers defense? I thought the offense looked good. They played well. They ran the ball. Probably didn't run it as much as maybe they should have, but they ran the ball well. Juwan Jennings was incredible. We'll talk about him. Brock Purdy was really good. This was the big test for him that everybody was looking for. How's he going to do without McCaffrey, Debo, and Kittle? And he was great. And so wanted to see what you thought about the defense, because the special teams was terrible. We can talk about them. But Isaac Yedem can't cover anybody. The safeties keep getting beat deep. Bosa and Floyd, I don't know where they're at. There's the pass rush just is not. It looked like it was good. They looked like they were going to have a big game from a pass rush standpoint, but that certainly didn't turn out. Charvarius Ward's not playing like he normally does. They can't seem to stop the run. They're having trouble getting off the field on third down. What is going on with this defense?
Well, I think it's interesting when you think about this game and you see that the Rams scored 27 points. Your first inclination is the defense was really bad. I think if you go back and you watch the first half back, it actually was really good in the first half. They played
Yeah.
tremendously well until you get the fake punt. And you can argue the defense did their job. The defense got off the field 4th and 6. You're getting the ball back with just around 6 minutes left. The likelihood is the 49ers are going to occupy the rest of the clock. They're moving the football consistently as an offense, and you're probably getting a shutout in the first half from the defense. It just didn't work out. That was a good drive by the Rams going down and getting the touchdown at the end of the half. I thought they executed well. And then that's when you started seeing some holes. I think that when you come to Nick Sorensen, I think he is figuring out which one of his players can handle certain roles. And you brought up Isaac Yedem, and I'm not sure Isaac Yedem's been as good in man coverage as we were all expecting. I think that's where he's really getting burned, is he's getting beat across the middle. He gave up 5 catches for 55 yards, but most of it was on one catch. It was a play over the middle. It was 3rd down, which makes it worse. 49ers ran a 0 blitz. They brought the heat, did not get home, and he was, in a trail position, and he lost. And I think that that's something the 49ers can evaluate in the future, is how many times can we actually put Isaac Yedem in those types of situations? Maybe that's not the best for him. And I think realizing what works for your players and what doesn't will let you kind of build a game plan that really works to their strengths. And I think that's one of the problems right now. Sorensen's figuring it out. And I think that there's a lot that needs to be figured out when it comes to this 49ers defense. But I don't think it's like they're so terrible they can't overcome this. I think that there was some good things in this game. There was definitely some bad things in this game. But I do think that this special teams for the 49ers really hurt the defense in a bad way in this football game. There's 2 situations, the fake punt and also the punt where Brian Schneider has Mitch Wisnowski punt it to the returner, and they get that big return. That person should not have touched the football at all. That ball should have went in the end zone for a touchback or out of bounds. You don't allow them a return, and then you don't put Devondre Campbell in that situation because it's a different situation. Right there, you're trying to hold him out of field goal range. So you're taking a shot to try to force him out of field goal range instead of what happened where they would have had to go 50 yards. So to me, I think circumstance definitely played into it, but there was some weaknesses for the 49ers defense they still got to iron out.
And of course, Jake Moody missed field goal, his first miss of the season. I mean, what was it, 55 yards or something like that? That's not a chip shot, but he certainly should make that. There's still the question late in a game with the game on the line, is he cut out for this? I think it's too early to know that. He's still young. He's in his second season, the beginning of his second season. So I'm not going to count out Jake Moody yet. I'm also not going to count out Nick Sorensen quite yet. It was this point into DeMeco Ryan's first season as defensive coordinator in 2021 that we were calling for his head. There was that game against the Green Bay Packers in Santa Clara where Rodgers and Devontae Adams by themselves beat the 49ers right there at the end of the game, like with 3 passes or something like that. And so I remember a lot of fans at that time wanted DeMeco Ryans fired, and the 49ers did not do that. It would have been stupid to do that. And now DeMeco is one of the best head coaches, seemingly so far in the NFL. So it would be short-sighted to give up on Nick Sorensen this soon.
Yeah, I think so. They're going to figure this thing out. I think that there are some moving parts. It's not going to help now that you have an injury to Javon Hargrave on the interior part of your defensive line. That probably means you're having some movement along that line. And you're having a hard time when you're trying to generate pressure with 4. The 49ers have had success over the last 2 weeks getting to the quarterback. I don't think it's been at the level that everyone is wanting. Everyone's waiting for that vaunted 49ers defensive pass rush. But you're seeing a lot of teams hold guys in for max protection, and a lot of teams are running heavier sets right now. They're running 12. They're running 21 personnel, and they're making it more difficult for this 49ers defense. This defense is built to play from in front, to get after the quarterback in crunch time and finish games off. And the problem is, right now, they've been getting the ball ran down their throats a little bit. They're holding on at first in the first part of the game, but eventually the game is starting to wear them down. Then they can't hold up against those double teams. Hargrave, Malik Collins, Kevin Givens, they weren't built to take on double teams consistently and win. That's not what their game is. Their game is to get into the backfield and generate pressure and penetrate and cause problems in the backfield. We see it at times, but that's why the 49ers need to get a lead, so that way it eliminates the run game. You look at week 1 against the Jets, game plan worked. They got ahead. They played from in front. They got after Aaron Rodgers, even though he got rid of the football quickly and you didn't get the sacks. You still got them turning away from Breece Hall in the run game. Worked out for the 49ers. Week 2, Minnesota was in front. Minnesota was the one that was able to double team at the point of attack and get it done. So you see the way that things are going in these games. The 49ers need to make sure they play better execution early on in the game, so that way the end of the game benefits their defense a lot more than it has over the last 2 weeks.
CJ Gray is in the chat, and he said Bosa's overrated. He's slow and stiff. Strong, man. He also said that Mooney Ward playing hurt was something. Doesn't look like he normally. Yeah, he doesn't look like he normally does, and he was hurt last week. He was on the injury report, so maybe he is dealing with something. The 49ers 2024 said, you see the 49ers bringing back DJ Jones. Well, it wouldn't be until next season when he becomes a free agent. I'd love to see that happen. But whether or not they do it, they never call and ask me what I think. And often it seems like they go the opposite way of what I want. So I don't know. What do you think? It'd be great to have somebody like that back.
I think it comes down to how the Broncos fare this season. I mean, if the Broncos start struggling, they won last week, so we'll see what happens. But if they fall out of playoff contention, that could be one of those trade deadline type moves where you bring in DJ Jones for that stretch run, and he would be a huge addition to this defense. But Denver's going to have to be out of it. And I think that's what you're waiting to see. The 49ers are going to have to figure something out in the meantime. But yeah, I mean, that would be a huge plug and play win for the 49ers. You throw him in there with Malik Collins, and you can withstand the loss now of Javon Hargrave, because, DJ Jones is very good against the run, and it has some pass rush ability as well. So that would be huge. But I think we're weeks away from that potentially being in development, and Denver has to struggle for the foreseeable future for that to even be a chance to happen.
Well, let's talk about the Javon Hargrave injury and what you think the 49ers might do on the defensive line now. They're not going to be making any trades anytime soon. But I wonder, with T.Y. McGill, I don't know if they'll bring him up. Certainly Jordan Elliott is there. Do you think that he's going to slide into that starting role? And is there a possibility that, because we know that Hargrave's strength was pass rush, not run defense, is it possible the run defense could improve if, say, Jordan Elliott replaces Hargrave in the starting lineup?
I do think Jordan Elliott's the most likely to start, opposite of Malik Collins. You saw Jordan Elliott over the last couple of years with the Cleveland Browns start a lot of football games for them, and he was very stout, like you said, in the run game. I do think that could be an advantage for the 49ers. They might pick up a little bit in the run defense while losing something when it comes to pass rush. And so you're going to have kind of the combination, right? It was back when the 49ers had to have Hassan Ridgeway start for them for a while, where the run defense got remarkably better, but the pass rush was definitely struggling a little bit, because what happens is now defenses are going to take their double teams and move them off of Hargrave and move them onto Malik Collins when it comes to passing downs. That means Jordan Elliott has to win. I think you can make this work. You just have to be more strategic, and you have to somewhat manipulate your personnel groupings. Jordan Elliott playing on your obvious, first two downs, have him play next to Malik Collins, and then bring in Yetur Gross-Matos to rush from the inside could be what they need to do to generate pass rush. But what that also means is if you're getting Gross-Matos those extra reps inside, you might need to add another defensive lineman to your roster. So that could mean maybe they do bring up Sam Okawanu officially and add him to the active roster and have a fifth defensive lineman, because they've been giving him more reps than they have Robert Beal. So I think that there's a lot of moving parts that come from this, but I do think Jordan Elliott's likely to start. And then the question is, who's it going to be? T.Y. McGill? Is it going to be Evan Anderson? I think it could go game by game, decision wise, until Kalia Davis comes back, which is great news that they have Kalia Davis to come back. But if you're going against a heavy run team like New England, and Evan Anderson showed the ability to take on double teams at practice lately, maybe you go with him in this matchup. And then when you go against a team that you need penetration, you go with the T.Y. McGill. I expect it to be McGill for the mere fact I don't think Evan Anderson's ready yet, but just something to consider when you're talking about who the 49ers could elevate. And they did bring back Shaquille Brown to the practice squad just today. They had moved on from Tracy Morgan yesterday, bringing Shaquille Brown today. So adding more defensive line depth with the injury to Javon Hargrave.
Yeah, and Sam Okinawu actually came in, sacked the quarterback, doubled his career sacks. I think he came into the game with a half a sack. And so good for him there. Let's shift gears a little bit. Christian McCaffrey, it's been reported, is seeing a specialist in Germany, I think. Does this concern you that McCaffrey is going to see a specialist overseas? Is this something that we might need to be concerned about from a career standpoint, not just for this season? I mean, I would think that there's plenty of specialists here in the States, but maybe this is just a normal thing. But because I know you heard about that, so what did you think? Was that a concern, or was it just like, he'll be fine?
I always think it's a concern when you're having to go overseas. And usually when you hear overseas, you're thinking it's something to do with stem cells. And, that means they're trying to regenerate some stuff going on there. And, I do get concerned about Christian McCaffrey. I haven't really thought about it being a career-ending injury, but I have thought about how long will this keep him out. I've seen some doctors talking about that with him starting that now, the likelihood is that wouldn't really take effect for 2 to 3 months. So you could be talking about a December return for Christian McCaffrey. And anytime you start talking that it could be December, that makes you a little bit nervous. What team are you going to look like when you get there? Are you going to have won enough football games? I think Jordan Mason's played well, but you definitely see that there's a difference between Jordan Mason and Christian McCaffrey and the things that he adds to your football team. So yeah, this is a big concern. I don't think there's any way that it can't be a big concern. And we'll see what happens. Maybe, we don't know what the treatment is. We don't know what kind of opinion he was going to get. But hopefully, Kyle Shanahan said in his presser today that he hasn't heard anything about McCaffrey not playing this season. So that's at least hopeful news that he's going to come back at some point. But it does appear that it's going to be a little bit longer than originally anticipated.
Give me a couple of players you want to see replaced. And I can give you mine if you want me to go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mine are Ronnie Bell. I don't want to see him anymore. I'd rather see Jacob Cowing or even Chris Conley. I don't know why. Like I can understand if Kyle's not ready to put in the rookie, fine. But Chris Conley is better than Ronnie Bell. So I'm not sure why that. I heard somebody say, well, Conley is Ayuk's backup and Bell is Debo's backup. That's a dumb argument to me. I don't think that should matter. I think the best guy should be out there. Devondre Campbell, I don't want to see him anymore. And I don't mind seeing him in the run game, in the run defense, but not on passing downs. I'd rather see D Winters. I mean, he's been hurt though, or even Curtis Robinson. I'd like to see what he brings, and maybe he'd be worse. Isaac Yedem, I'd rather see Renardo Green. You mentioned it earlier that Yedem's not been as good as we thought that he was going to be. That I'm not a huge fan of Jake Brendel, but I don't think anybody else on the team is better right now. Maybe when John Feliciano comes back, but I don't think that that's going to happen. I think that Chris Foerster likes Jake Brendel. He even reiterated it late last week. And so he had a laundry list of why he thinks that Brendel is the right guy. So are there any players that you would like to see replaced? Not so much on the team, but rather on the field.
Well, I think we're going to see Ronnie Bell end up getting replaced here in the next couple weeks. Deebo Samuel's going to return from injury, not this week, but hopefully next week. Ricky Pearsall is going to be capable of coming back off the IR or the NFI next week too. So we're getting close to having a couple of receivers back that could definitely help. Kyle Shanahan did bring up the fact that the ball that Ronnie Bell dropped deep down the field, they had actually ran the same exact route and tried to get the same look for Conley, and it didn't work out earlier in the game. So Ronnie Bell dropping the football 3 times in this game, inexcusable. He just got to make those plays. So I do think that they need to work on something with that. I think that we could be a week away, though, from them making the decision that way. For whatever reason, they don't feel Jacob Cowing's ready. Kyle Shanahan has a certain way he handles his wide receivers, and it's worked out for the most part. I think that one thing that I've definitely been on for a while has been Demetrius Flanagan fouls. And just watching the way that teams right now are going ahead and running their heavy sets to put the 49ers in their base 4-3 and take advantage of Flanagan fouls in the run game has been a real problem. And we know that we'd love to have D. Winters or Curtis Robinson in there, but you brought it up. D. Winters is hurt. They went to D. Winters some and replaced Devondre Campbell when it came to nickel situations in this football game, and D. Winters hurt his ankle again. So that's a real problem. Some point you just look around and you're like, wait, I don't have the guy that can go out and do this. I have to roll with the guy I have. And I think that's part of the problem. I do think as D. Winters gets healthy, and hopefully at some point he will, it would make sense for the 49ers in nickel situations to go with Winters on the field over Devondre Campbell. I think he's better in coverage. We watched him lock up Christian McCaffrey during training camp. To me, he makes sense. I thought he looked good when he was going against tight ends and others. I like Campbell, like you said, in the run game, so I'm not ready to move off that. And we all know that eventually we're going to get Drake Greenlaw and Devondre Campbell next to Fred Warner. That's ultimately what they really want. But they've got to kind of make some things happen. So I think DFF, figuring out how to get some more production out of him. I don't think it was terrible from him this week, actually. A couple plays he got tackled by some of the wide receivers from the Rams. That's unfortunate. But I do think there's some opportunities there. And you bring up Jake Brendel. I will say this about Brendel. This was actually his best football game of the year that he played. And he had some critical mistakes, a couple missed blocks that really hurt this football team. One that would have put Jordan Mason in the end zone for a touchdown, right? Game, set, match, game's over. So I think that we're having critical mistakes at times, but it was a cleaner game than we've seen from him so far. And you brought up, who are you going to put in? Who are you going to start right now over Jake Brendel? To me, I think you don't have the necessary options that you're looking for to replace these guys right now, but maybe they'll come halfway through the year. Maybe they'll come off IR, and then we'll have a different conversation.
CJ in the chat said Bell actually cost us the Super Bowl by not getting out of the way of a punt, but that was Darrell Luter Jr. That wasn't Ronnie Bell. And then Ray
Kyle Williams, not number 10. I'm just bringing bad memories.
Yeah, number 10 too. Yeah. So yeah, that was Luter, and then Ray jumped on it. Let's see. Let's move on here. Here's the next thing. It's not time to panic. The 49ers often start slow, but is it me, or does this kind of have a 2020 feel, coming off of a Super Bowl loss, losing some games? Well, actually in 2020, they started off pretty well at the beginning, and then they started losing all these players. Well, this time they're losing players. They lost players even before the season started. Are you getting any 2020 vibes? Could it be that this just isn't the season? Or do you think, yeah, they're going to come back, they're going to get healthy, and they're going to turn it around?
I haven't got the 2020 vibes yet. I know a lot of people definitely have been talking about 2020 vibes, and I think it's easy to say coming off a Super Bowl that that's the correlation that you make. But the reason I haven't is because we lost players for the season. It was Nick Bosa, Solomon Thomas, like guys were out for the whole year right away. And I know Javon Hargrave's out for the year, but for the most part, guys have the ability to come back, right? Kittle's dealing with a hamstring. He's already limited at practice. Deebo Samuel's dealing with a hamstring. He's supposed to be back next week. Christian McCaffrey coming back at some point. Feliciano coming back. You just got guys. Kalia Davis is somebody that they're going to have to count on, and he's coming back. So I haven't got those feelings yet. I don't feel the same kind of feeling, and I'll be honest, straightforward with it. Part of the reason is Brock Purdy. We've got Brock Purdy, and as long as we got Brock Purdy, we've got a chance to win football games. He proved it this week. He went out there and absolutely put on a show. And I think that when you have that kind of player, you always have the ability to be in on football games. And we have enough talent with that because you don't just have Brock, but you have Fred on defense too. And as long as you have those two guys, you know that every week you're going to be in the game and competing. And so for that reason, I don't think that 2020 is the feeling I get. But this is more in tune with 2021 and some of those where you're battling through injuries. It might be tough. You might have to work your way into the playoffs. What can you do when you get there? And that's the whole point. How healthy will the 49ers be in December and January compared to what they are right now? I think that's when the real questions need to be answered. We're a long ways from that. We have 14 football games left for the 49ers to play, and they just got to win a lot more than they lose, and they'll be fine.
Yeah, this is a better team than what was in 2020, and it's a better quarterback. And so Jimmy Garoppolo missed a lot of games. And so if you look at the fact that Nick Mullins played a lot in 2020, then this is a much, much better quarterback. So I definitely think that that it's too soon to give up, too soon to start saying fire Shanahan, and we've seen that a lot. Too soon to say it's 2020 all over again. It's familiar to me. I'm not saying that I'm getting those vibes yet, but I have kind of joked around that it's I called 2020 the lost year, and hoping that this year is not the same. Let me ask you this. Is Juwan Jennings the best wide receiver on the 49ers?
No, but he played the best on Sunday. He looked really good, but he got the matchups that the 49ers were looking for. I still think that Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk are the top two wide receivers on this football team. But Juwan Jennings consistently proves how important he is to this 49ers football team and how important he is to this offense. He just consistently makes plays. And it's not like he hasn't cooked the Rams before. He does. But they look at him and they don't give him the same sort of attention that they give Ayuk and they give Deebo and they give Kittle, and he takes advantage of it. So I thought this was a big game for Juwan Jennings. They needed a big game from him. I thought he looked really good, and I love the route running. It was good. The physicality. That catch he made over the top of Carnell Lake is going to be one of the best catches that I think I've seen in a long time from a 49ers receiver. We don't normally have wide receivers that go up and get footballs and win those 50-50 balls. But you can see after that, Brock Purdy had so much faith in Juwan Jennings. And I think that's what's so huge for 49ers is he's looking for Juwan now. And Juwan has proven now that he can win. And maybe defenses will have to start paying him more mind. And the 49ers can get some other targets to some other guys. But yeah, Juwan, he's fantastic. One of my favorite players on the team, the grit, the aggressiveness, the toughness in the run game. He's everything you want your team to be and somebody that you want to build a team like. You want guys like that dog mentality, and Juwan Jennings has got it.
Yeah, it was so much fun to watch him play on Sunday. It always is, but Sunday, he just took it to a much higher level, and that was a lot of fun. So on Friday, John Lynch on KNBR said that Jacob Cowing would likely see offensive snaps against the Rams. Obviously, he did not. Today, Kyle Shanahan was asked why, and he said that it wasn't part of the plan, but he hopes that Cowing can become a consistent player on offense. So I have two questions for you. One, are there communication issues? I know there aren't problems between Kyle and John. They're good friends, but could there be some communication issues when the GM is saying one thing and the head coach is saying something different? And then the other thing is what might be holding Cowing back? Is it learning the offense? Is it the blocking part? What do you think might be playing into that?
Well, I think definitely things change. You had a situation where you had George Kittle kind of up in the air when it came to injury. And so your game plan could fluctuate depending on what personnel you have out there. And so with George Kittle, maybe you see some more Jacob Cowing because he doesn't have to block and doesn't have to get as physical with the type of matchups that you're looking for as far as a wide receiver blocking and overall your game plan. So I think maybe he had a very limited role. That's what I thought he was going to have going into the game. And maybe they scrapped that a little bit and thought, you know what, let's go with the guys who know how to block because we're going to be short a tight end that can really get things done. So we're going to go to certain sets and certain looks. And I think that's probably what happened. I don't have a problem with it because I think that John Lynch saying things on KNBR and them not always coming true, I think is a great sign for 49ers game planning because teams can't just listen to what the GM says and say, oh, we're going to see Cowing. We got to prepare for it. Now you don't know exactly. So I don't have a problem with that. When it comes to Jacob Cowing, I think he's just learning the way of playing NFL football for Kyle Shanahan. I think that he showed tremendous upside during training camp in the preseason. We're all very excited about what he could be within this offense, and he's going to get there. I think they're just trying to bring him along and make sure they have him to where they need. And I do think blocking is a big reason why he's not on the field consistently. He's just not consistent enough in his blocking, at least what I saw in preseason. And so you bring him along slowly because you do have guys like Conley, Jawan Jennings, and Brandon Ayuk who are blocking beasts. I would rather have them on the field than Jacob Cowing right now as well. I think at some point, though, Cowing's going to figure it out. And then you're going to be able to use his big 4-3 speed to make dynamic plays down the field. And when it calls for it, hopefully he'll be able to deliver. But I honestly don't think we're going to see too much Cowing this season. Debo's coming back. Pearsall's coming back. I think those guys are going to move ahead of him in the depth chart. The only thing we can hope is that Cowing stays ahead of Ronnie Bell and he gets some opportunities in certain situations down the stretch.
I heard somebody this week, I'm thinking that it was Grant Cohn, but I'm not 100% sure, pointed out, and I thought this was interesting, pointed out that Kyle Shanahan wanted, I don't remember if it was Trey Sermon or Ty Davis Price that he mentioned, but that John Lynch and the front office went with Jordan Mason. And it took forever for Kyle to let Mason play. He then mentioned that he believes that Kyle wanted Ricky Pearsall, but that the front office wanted Jacob Cowing, and now Cowing can't play. Sounds like when Pearsall's ready to come back, that he's probably going to start playing. You think there's any truth to that, or do you think that this is just somebody talking?
Well, I do know that Anthony Lynn was the guy behind the Jordan Mason. He was very high on Jordan Mason, and he went to Kyle Shanahan about it. And Shanahan said, wait, I'm supposed to be really excited about a guy that can't get on the field. He's a backup at Georgia Tech. And of course, he was behind Jahmyr Gibbs at Georgia Tech, and that's why he was the backup running back. So Anthony Lynn is the one that was really behind him. And then we know that Jordan Mason, when Bobby Turner got back from his surgery, wasn't doing the things that Bobby Turner wanted him to do. And they transitioned from Anthony Lynn being running back coach to Bobby Turner taking back over. And it was a different set of expectations from Bobby Turner. So he's on their P's and Q's every single time, making sure they do it right. I think it was just a process. He was bad at pass protection. There's no other way to say it. Jordan Mason wasn't good at that. He could always run. He just wasn't great when it came to pass protection. And he wasn't the best when it came to catching the football in the backfield. He's gotten better, tremendously better in both aspects. I think you're seeing a development role. So I don't think that that's what it is, that you got a guy that maybe you like in one situation or you don't. Bobby Turner's usually very much behind each of the running back decisions because they trust him in his evaluation process. Yes, Kyle does sign off on the guy. Sometimes it doesn't work out. When it comes to Pearsall and Cowing, these are two entirely different players. It's not like you're picking, these aren't both apples. This is an apples to oranges conversation. They do different things. They're expected to do different things. They're different size. They play different positions. So to me, I think that both these guys, Kyle would want both of them. And I think John Lynch would like both of them. And I can't see Pearsall not being someone that John Lynch was high on, considering he spent time in Arizona State with Herm Edwards. Herm Edwards and John Lynch have a tremendous relationship, and he trusts him very much. So I expect that was something that they were definitely high on, and probably why they went with Pearsall in round one when they were, hoping he would make it round two, I'm sure. But that's probably why they went with them, because they trust Herm Edwards so much in his evaluations.
And Ricky Pearsall has to sit out at least one more game. So after this week, I believe he's eligible to return. I wouldn't have thought that a guy who took a bullet to the chest would come back in week 5, but this guy might. I mean, he just seems like he's wired differently. Now, I think they'll be cautious with him, but I would not be surprised to see him sooner than we would have expected.
Yeah, I definitely didn't think he was going to have the potential to come back after 4 weeks or 5 weeks. I thought that this was going to be half the season at least. And in fact, when it first happened, I thought maybe he was gone for the whole year.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's going to be capable of going out there and playing at some point is huge. 49ers could use contributions at the wide receiver room. And, I'm a huge fan of guys like Chris Conley. I think Conley does a lot of dirty work for the 49ers. He does what they ask him to do, and he's played a pivotal role. But when you're talking about a guy that can consistently get open and make plays, Chris Conley's not that guy. He does the other things for your football team. He can make the occasional catch. But Ricky Pearsall has the upside to go out there and catch you 7-8 footballs and get 75 yards and a touchdown. Though that's a different dynamic than the other guys you have at the end of the roster. And that would be nice to add him to that mix of Ayuk, Debo, Jawan Jennings, and now have a Pearsall. Now you have 4 formidable wide receivers that you can consistently rotate and just put pressure on defenses. Plus, Pearsall could win in man-to-man coverage. That's something important too. I think he's going to be huge in the red zone. He's fearless like Jawan Jennings. So I'm looking forward to him getting out there.
Here's a question. Sorry, I'm not sure how to say this name, but this is from the chat. Why does Kyle abandon the run in the fourth quarter? We've seen him do that in Super Bowls. We've seen him do that in big games. And I would probably agree that he did that some on Sunday.
I think here's the problem with that. I know that's the normal take when it comes to Kyle, but if you go back and you watch that drive, they are actually running the football pretty consistently. They come out, they got the ball back. I think it was a 7-point game. They got the ball back in the fourth quarter. Jawan Jennings play action pass, boom, first down, get near midfield. The next play, run to Jordan Mason. Next play, run to Jordan Mason, first down. The next play, run to Jordan Mason. That's 3 runs in a row. Then you get a holding call on Kyle Juszczyk on the edge. Mm-hmm. Now you're sitting there at 1st and 18. That's when you have to adjust your thought process on how do I handle running the football, because now I want to get into field goal range for Jake Moody. I can't sit back now and just run the ball. I have to be strategic. I need to get half those yards back. So I think circumstance took Kyle Shanahan out of his running attack right there. And so I think sometimes circumstance plays into these things, and it just look at the stat sheet and you go, he turned away from the run game. It's like, he didn't want to turn away from the run game. Trust me. He wanted that 8-yard run where Kyle Juszczyk got called for holding and then be able to go get another first down and just completely run the clock out. It was taken away. And I think that sometimes needs to be remembered when we're talking about how Kyle Shanahan attacks in the fourth quarter. Has it been a Kyle Shanahan problem in games before? Absolutely. Was it a problem in this one? I don't think so. I think circumstance played into it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And also how the defense plays. They were seeing a lot of 8-man boxes, and so you just can't keep running into those. You don't want to abandon the run, but you can't keep running into a wall over and over again. You've got to kind of loosen up the defense a little bit. Here's another question before we move on. 49er Classic asks, what do you think about Trent Taylor being elevated?
I think it's a possibility. The question is, what are you going to do with other elevations, right? We're probably going to have a defensive tackle that gets elevated. The 49ers have yet to add a 53rd player to their roster. They're just kind of hanging back, waiting. And I think that's to bring back John Feliciano or bring back Ricky Pearsall or somebody off IR eventually. So you got to determine who you're going to elevate. If you need help along the defensive line, you're probably going to elevate defensive linemen. That might not allow you to bring up a wide receiver. So I think it could be 2 defensive linemen this week. I think we actually might see T.Y. McGill elevated and Sam Okuwanu for his 3rd time elevated before they have to make a roster decision on him. And that's probably what they'll do this week because of the Hargrave injury. Of course, once they put Hargrave on the IR, they have another active roster spot available, and we'll see what they do. So they could make another decision, but that's my likelihood right now. But I think Trent Taylor would be an upgrade over Ronnie Bell. He's a pretty good blocker. But I don't know how much people want to see Trent Taylor on the field either. I think a lot of people would rather see Terrace Marshall.
Yeah, that's probably true. And I just really don't know what Trent Taylor would bring to the team right now with their current situation. Let's move on to the Patriots game. Is there any way that the New England Patriots, who are a pretty bad team, is there any way that they can upset the 49ers on Sunday?
I think there is a way that they could cause problems for the 49ers. They are really good at running the football. They run the ball for 144 yards a game, and they have two really good tight ends. They have Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper. They could come out and run 12 personnel against the 49ers the same way the Los Angeles Rams did, the same way that the Minnesota Vikings did, and try to run the ball down the 49ers' throat. They have injuries along that offensive line. The New England Patriots have a lot of injuries. And so I don't know if they could consistently stick with it, but what do they have to lose? Jacoby Brissett and that New England offense has been dreadful throwing the football. They average 102 yards per game through the air. That is the worst in the NFL. So they're going to try to grind this game out, load up heavy boxes, run the football at the 49ers, and try to make this a Ramondre Stevenson versus the 49ers defense football game. And the 49ers are going to have to go prove that they can stop it. But that means is they're going to use the clock. They're going to limit the amount of possessions that are available to the 49ers in this game. And I think if they're able to have success on the ground, that will make it a little bit more difficult for the 49ers to be able to get a significant win. I do think there's a huge advantage, though, on the other side of the ball with Brock Purdy and the passing game against a New England defense that's very good against the run, but not as good against the pass. They give up nearly 250 yards through the air per game. They run a lot of man coverage, should give you some opportunities. So I think it's one of those 49ers passing attack against the Patriots run game. Which defense plays it better is going to have the best chance to win. But I think they're just going to try to slug this thing out, grind it out on the ground, and hope that they can wear down a 49ers defense that's shown to struggle against the run over the last 2 weeks.
And Ramondre Stevenson is no joke. I watched him play at Oklahoma, and when he gets a full head of steam going, he's a load. So that is a concern. That's their strength against the 49ers' weakness. And so that'll be interesting. Jacoby Brissett, you mentioned him. He doesn't scare me at all. Do you know the last time Jacoby Brissett started against the 49ers?
I do not.
2017, when he was quarterback in the Indianapolis Colts. This was after Andrew Luck retired out of the blue. The 49ers and the Colts met in, I don't know, like week 5, week 6, something like that. Both teams were winless. I was actually at that game, and it was ugly. It was a boring, brutal game to be there for. And the Colts somehow won there at the end. That was Kyle Shanahan's first year, and that 49ers team was pretty horrible. What else do you see? Anything from the Patriots game that you want to point out that we should watch for?
Yeah, I think, talking about Hooper and Henry, we need to see how they are handled by the 49ers defense. We've had question marks about the safety position, lots of question marks about Jair Brown, especially having some struggles when it comes to getting beat deep a little bit. That's going to be a big point of emphasis in this game, because if you're loading up and running the football, those guys are going to have to play tight ends probably exclusively in coverage, and they're going to have to be able to have clean eyes, because if you're in the box, you've got to be able to read run and read pass. Passes are still your first responsibility, but sometimes you can get cooked. You can see into the backfield and lose sight of your guy. So that's going to be a tough matchup for the 49ers. I think Hufanga will do just fine. He looked pretty good as far as his instincts and understanding where he's supposed to be. But I wonder about those matchups. How many times can New England get safeties and match up against their really good tight ends and linebackers? We just talked about Devondre Campbell, Demetrius Flanagan fouls. They're going to be on the field. What do the 49ers do to match up with those guys? I think that is going to be a key. Ramondre Stevenson on the ground, and then the two tight ends through the air, because really wide receiver-wise, Demario Douglas and Thornton and those guys haven't really done a whole lot. And so I don't think the 49ers are worried about that in this game as much as they are the tight ends in the run game.
Kendrick Bourne still there?
Yeah, he's on the PUP list, so okay. He's not able to come back yet. He's still recovering from injury from last year.
One more question about the Rams game. What happened on the big pass play toward the end of the game to Atwell? Was that Charvarius Ward? It when it was live, I thought that was on him, but I haven't gone back and watched. But the 49ers safeties have been getting beat over the top some this year. Was that a Jair Brown issue, or was that Ward, or was it a combination of the two? What happened there?
Yeah, it's a combination of the two. They're running a quarters defense for the mere fact you don't want to get beat deep, right? You want to make them earn it on these drives. That's why when you used to talk about like, oh, the defensive coordinator's bad or the players are bad. Sometimes defensive coordinator is going to get blamed for bad play by your players. And this is one of those situations. Cover 4, they don't pressure the 49ers with multiple verticals. It's one vertical on that side. So you should have had Charvarius Ward playing him. It should have almost looked like man from Charvarius Ward. He should have been in his hip pocket with Jair Brown over the top. Neither one of those things happened. You get Jair Brown, he keeps peeking in on crossers over the middle of the field, and that's ending up burning him in the long run. So that's one of the plays I was talking about that he needs to get better, that Jair needs to get better at. That's a concern right now for 49ers safeties. So you got Charvarius Ward, who should have been with him, and you've got Jair Brown that should have been over the top. And all the while, Nick Sorensen's going to get blamed for it, and he didn't do anything wrong besides tell his guys to be in the right spots. It just didn't execute, and that's a mistake on the secondary. And they got to be better. And you got an All-Pro in Charvarius Ward, and I know that he's nicked up and all of those things, but we've seen a couple of occasions now over the last 2 weeks where he's got dirty eyes and he's looking in the backfield and he's not playing the way he should. And I think we just need to get Charvarius Ward re-locked in. I think he will at some point. I don't know what's hindering him right now, but you can't allow these mistakes to happen, especially at that point, because they got one speed threat on their entire team in Tutu Atwell, the one guy you can't let go vertical. If he wants to break it off at 12 yards and make a catch underneath, let him do it. Who cares? Just don't give up the vertical in that point of the game. And they did, and it was just bad play overall.
Did you hear Kyle Shanahan say that they were kind of expecting the fake punt, and yet they still couldn't stop it?
Right. You're expecting the fake punt. So what it comes down to, what Kyle's kind of telling everyone without saying it verbatim, is that you had a technique flaw. Somebody that had outside contain on that play, which it was Chris Conley that was out there, did not run it exactly right. He did not execute his role. The easiest thing would have been, if you were expecting a punt fake, would to be run punt safe, which means keep your defense out on the field and just make them go ahead and run the punt, which they did later on in the game, but it was too little too late. So maybe you'll see a change in philosophy where they thought that they had it figured out. They were expecting it. They told their players to watch for it, and their players didn't execute. But let's just go ahead and take it out of their hands next time. Let's go to punt safe and just be extra particular with how we handle things, because that was a huge pivotal part of that game. So, but those are the frustrating things, right? As a coach, where you're like, you put it in, you plan for it, you tell them it's coming, and then they still don't get it right. And, at what point do you say, okay, it's the coaches or the players? I think the coaches are just going to have to over plan for this and just make it so the players can't make a mistake.
Yeah. Great stuff, Ant. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. That's all we have today. Please make sure that you go and subscribe to both channels if you haven't already done so, 49ers Cutback and 49ers Camelot. We would appreciate that. Hey, we're hoping for a win. We don't want to show up next Wednesday and be talking about a third straight loss, this time to the New England Patriots. That's when we might start to panic. So everybody, be safe, enjoy the upcoming weekend, and let's come back with a victory. Ant, take care of this week, all right?
Oh yeah. We're gonna be praying for this one. We need a big win for the 49ers. And I think they're gonna get it. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it out. The 49ers are gonna get a win against New England, and we're gonna feel a lot better next Wednesday.
All right. You heard it here first. The 49ers